Hi, welcome to Csec Human and Social Biology with Mr. Wilson. Life and social interactions explained. Today, we're going to be looking at characteristics of living things. I do hope you are not alone. Grab a friend and let's go. Our objectives of the day are: define human and social biology, explain the concept of characteristics, list the characteristics of living things, and finally, define the 7 characteristics of living things. Before we could dive into this lesson, it's very important that we understand clearly what really is human and social biology. So let's look at the word biology. Bio means living or life. Logy means study of. Hence, biology is the study of life or living things, and always remember that living things are all referred to as organisms. Social. Social refers to the way organisms interact with each other. HSB, Human and Social Biology, is the study of human and its social interaction with other organisms and the environment. So, we'll be looking at biology and how its general principles can enhance the interaction of organisms and the environment. The emphasis is around human. The subject at this time is not considered a lab science. However, as of 2021, it is expected that the subject will have a practical component. So make use of what now exists. Now, there are many social issues around human and its environment. Now, these are some of the things that we're going to be looking at throughout this lesson. We're going to be looking at humans' access to food, water, shelter, disease, pollution, population growth. We're also going to be looking at competition. And one might wonder, what's competition? Well, we have a general idea of what is food. Access to food means that food that satisfies pretty much a balanced diet. Water, clean, portable water that is free of pathogen. Shelter that is secure from all elements and predation. Disease, that can't be, we just can't stress that anymore. We want to be free from disease in order to live our expected life expectancy and beyond. Pollution, we want to ensure that we have a clean, healthy environment. Hence, it's very important for us to look at pollution. Population growth is also important because that will determine how our food resource and water, how well we deal with that, and the type of technology we use to enhance their longevity. And competition, how do we interact with the space that we have so that all can live a sustainable life. Now, characteristic of living things. Let's look at the word characteristics and what it means. To explain, it means this condition, characteristic, is always present to make the particular thing true to its form. So the characteristic of anything, it is usually present, and if it is not present, then the thing would not have been true to form. Example, for a police station to be true to its form, it must have police, guns, records of complaints, and a holding area and will remain in its fixed position for a long time. All these would characterize a police station. Hence, a police checkpoint at the side of a road cannot be considered a police station, as it lacks some of the characteristics of a police station. One can appreciate that. Now, of course, you're going to be finding police there. Of course, you're going to be finding guns there. And of course, there's a great possibility you might find complaint being lodged there. But it does not satisfy all the characteristics. It's going to be moved within a short while. So we probably call it a police post and not a police station. Wow. To study the characteristics of living things, most kids usually need a reminder. Now, it is also true that all living things have features in common, and these features are called characteristics, which are used to, of course, classify them as living, or I'd love to say once living, but we're going to be staying within the realms of living. Now, there are seven characteristics of living things. Do you know any? Look at the mnemonics and see how best it can help you. Now, I have given you 4 here: reminder, Rednimer, Mrs. Gren, or Mr. Grens. Now, these would hold the first letter for each of the characteristics of living things. However, reminder and Rednimer, there's a common E you would have realized, and that is just a placeholder. So here we're looking at the common E. If you're looking at your screen, a common E here. However, this here you would realize that there are 7 letters for 7 characteristics of living things. Let's hop on into it. Now, Mrs. Gren. M for movement or locomotion, R for reproduction, S for sensitivity or irritability. See if you can help me here. Green for, very well, growth and development. R for respiration, good going. E for excretion. And finally, N for nutrition. You did well there. Let's move on. So let's write out the 7 characteristics of living things. There would be respiration, movement and locomotion, irritability or sensitivity, nutrition, growth/development, excretion, reproduction. It's very important to point out that example for number 2 is going to be movement/locomotion, not and. 3, irritability/sensitivity, not and. 5, development/growth, not and. So we have 7 characteristics of living things. Let's move on. The first one we want to look at today is respiration. Respiration. Now, the process by which cells of living organisms release energy from the food they consume. Pretty much that is what respiration is. It's simply a process by which energy is released from the food that we eat, the food that we consume, the food probably that we make if we were a plant. Remember, respiration is not confined only to animals. Plants also respire. This may be aerobic or anaerobic. So respiration in itself can be placed into 2 groups: aerobic, meaning it requires oxygen, and anaerobic, where oxygen is not required. Now remember, all living things carry out respiration, not only human or, as you would say, animal, but all living things will carry out respiration, because respiration is a characteristic of living things. Doing well so far. Now, I took the time out to carry out a simple experiment on a plant at home. I tied a bag over the plant and then firmly secured it with a tape. Now, if you look at the bag closely in the picture, you will realize that there's water droplet on the bag. Now, respiring organism will give off water as a byproduct of respiration. So this was evident to me that this plant is respiring because it is giving off water. And it's clear there in the experiment. You could do pretty much the same thing at home. Have a nice bag tight over a plant, and then you're going to be getting a tape, a masking tape, and you want to firmly secure it that nothing can get in and nothing will come out. Now, identify an example of a statement below in human. Now, respiring organism will give off water as a byproduct of respiration. Can you relate to that? Your answer: water coming out through the nostril when you breathe. You can recall, or you can go ahead and do the experiment by putting a mirror to the nostril, and in front of the nostril that is, and you will observe that it is somewhat smeared with water. The interpretation of these words may differ slightly, and that's the interpretation of movement and movement or locomotion. The interpretation is a little bit different, and let's look at it. Movement is change in position of part of the body. So it's a part of the body that is moving. The body does not usually change its position. So where it's grounded, that's where it's going to be. A mango tree will remain where it is planted. This is a term that is usually used correctly when referring to plant. So usually the term movement is usually used when referring to a plant, and it is correctly used when we are referring to a plant. However, when we are referring to animals, it could be a little different, or it could take in both words, movement and locomotion. Now, locomotion involves the total displacement of a body as seen when an animal changes its position. So the animal might be at point A, and then the animal moves to point B. That is locomotion. Now, we have a video clip here that we're going to be sharing with you. Now, the chickens locomote in the video, which is a form of movement. Plants show movement in growth and some sensitive responses. Let's look at what's happening here. Now, if you observe the video here, you would realize that the birds, they are moving. They are moving. And this type of movement is called locomotion, because you are realizing that they are moving from point A to point B. They are moving from where they were initially to somewhere new. Now, there are organisms like for example the plant. They really don't locomote, but they move. You could relate to the sensitive response of the mimosa plant or the shame old lady plant. When you touch that plant, what will happen is that it will close its leaf, and there are other plants that will close the leaf in the evening and so on and so forth. But this sensitive response, movement and locomotion, let us strike it down the middle. Movement is a term that is correctly used with plants because they really don't displace from where they are. However, locomotion speaks to us moving from one place to another. Very well. Now, animals move, and let us not limit our thoughts to flying, running, swimming, crawling. There are other ways in which animals move, and you're going to be seeing this in some videos that will come later in our course, Human and Social Biology. We're going to be looking at nutrition now. Nutrition. Now, let's look at this video. Now, the organisms here, they are feeding. You'll see the birds moving about. They are trying to get something to eat. And you'll see the plants nicely posed to the sunlight. They too are carrying out the process of photosynthesis. So in both cases, the organisms are feeding. Now, the chicken, they are pretty much scratching, trying to find worm or something just to eat, while the plants, like I said before, they are carrying out the process of photosynthesis. Alright, the process, nutrition pretty much is the process by which organisms obtain food / nutrient. Plants make their own food through photosynthesis, hence they are classified as autotrophic organisms. However, animals depend on others for food, hence they are classified as heterotrophic. So plants are autotrophic while animals are heterotrophic based on their nutrition type. Now, irritability, sensitivity. I want you to look closely at the footage we have to the right. You'll observe that there's a lizard there. Pay close attention. Now, I'm going to be invading the space of the lizard, and the lizard will figure out that, hey, I am under threat. I really don't like this guy. I think I need to get out of his way. Alright, so it is responding to a change in its environment. Let me play the video for you. Alright, it's looking out. Hey, who are you, buddy? Why are you here? You know, I'm not going to be hanging out with you. You know, this seems to be a real dangerous interaction. So it's preparing. I'm getting too close. I'm getting too close. I'm getting too close. He's looking, making a decision. Should I respond? Yes. And it took away itself for protection. So that is an example of irritability, an organism responding to changes in its environment. Alright. Now, irritability sensitivity. This is the ability that an organism possesses that allows it to respond to a stimulus. And a stimulus is pretty much a change in the environment or the environmental conditions. You may be able to relate to the mimosa plant, the shame old lady plant. You will touch that plant and you know what will happen. It's going to close its leaves. Development and growth. Now, growth is a permanent increase in size and how complex an organism is. Now, if you look at the plants here, the plant to the left, it's somewhat cut back, and you will observe that it is giving off new shoots. Alright, it was cut recently and it is somewhat showing signs of growing. Here, this is a newly erected fence, and you'll observe that there are plants growing on the fence. It's not so easy to see growth as it happens, but over time you will see that things get larger or become more complex. Excretion. This is the removal of metabolic waste. A very important word. You cannot define excretion without using the word metabolic waste. Excretion, this is the removal of metabolic waste from the organism. Now, it's very important to note that feces is not a metabolic waste, because to be a metabolic waste or to be classified as metabolic waste, then the waste would have had to pass through the process or gone through the process of metabolism, catabolism, anabolism, that type of a thing. And that we are going to be touching later into the lesson, so you want to follow us as we move along. Now, there are many stuff that we excrete, and we do this on a day-to-day basis. Example, plants would excrete oxygen and carbon dioxide. Animals would excrete, and those are not the only things, animals would excrete carbon dioxide, heat, water, urea salt, and all these we will talk more about in other lessons. So all we need to know now is just probably the names, and as we go along we'll get a little deeper into the content as it relates to these product of excretion. Reproduction. Now, this is the production of offspring by an organism. Reproduction may be classified as sexual or asexual. Now, in asexual reproduction, a part of a parent is used. In sexual, it requires the fusion of male and female sex cells, what we refer to as gametes. Let's move on. Now, here we have reproduction being evident. If you observe the plant to the right, you're seeing the flower here. It's a sign that the plant is reproducing. And if you observe the video here to the left, or the picture to the left, you'll observe that mother hen here has 2 chickens, which means that there is reproduction evident here. Be reminded that at any time you could pause. Be reminded that at any time you could go back and listen to this video however many times you so desire. Just please make sure you're learning. Now we want to look at living versus non-living. Now, living things can move, so too non-living. Living things respire. The same is true for non-living. Living things respond. The same is true for non-living. Living things feed, so too non-living. Now, we can all relate to a motor car moving, an aeroplane moving. Yes, they are non-living. We can relate to the fact that a motor vehicle would be burning the petrol in order for the car to move. That's combustion, but it's a type of respiration that releases more energy. Now, you might have been close to a car and the alarm went off, or you would have left the key in the ignition. That too would have caused some alarm. Now, the car itself would take petrol, and this petrol, of course, is a form of feeding, because it is the petrol that the car will use to provide that energy in order for it to move. The motor car will also excrete because it has an exhaust, and from the exhaust you're going to be getting that waste from respiration or from the combustion. However, non-living things can not reproduce. Non-living things, they can not reproduce. Neither can they grow. Non-living things cannot grow. This is the reason why non-living things are in a class by themselves. They cannot be classified as living things because they would not have assumed all the characteristics of living things. They are not able to reproduce, and they are not able to grow. Let's move on. So we're pretty close to the end. I want you to list for me 7 characteristics of living things. I want you to distinguish between respiration and nutrition. I want you also to define excretion and name 2 excretory products, as we have had some in the table in the presentation. I want you to leave me a comment. We are fueled from your comment. I want you also to ensure that you like, share, subscribe, and of course click that notification bell so that whenever a new video is published, you will be among the first to know. You have been watching Csec Human and Social Biology with Mr. Wilson. Please be reminded to study.